So to go back to something you were just talking about, which is Costco.
Yeah.
So I know you cop a lot of shit because you work with Costco from the industry.
Mhm.
Why do you think that we as an industry tend to look at a company as a sellout whenever they step into that space?
I think there's a few different things at play. Well, first of all, we've all been members of the hateration. There's a lot of jealousy.
Right.
It's really, really fucking hard to sell into Costco
Yeah.
because you have to have top level operations. You
Yeah.
have to have your pricing model perfect. You have to be your auditability has to be top tier. You have to get a certain and even to get to that point is a tremendous amount of infrastructure.
Mm.
And you have to be able to produce a product at the level that they dictate to you. But the good thing about Costco, I just will say, is that Costco, they're fair. They don't take huge margins. A lot of the other, retailers that we sell into do.
Mm.
So I've been impressed by that. But I think the other part of that too is this idea that, grocery and specialty coffee are inherently at odds. And the reason being is that goes back to what I just said, which is that, we have told people that coffee has to be made to order and it's only good for about a week, maybe two.
Folks, following on from the success of Map It Forward's online mastermind groups in 2024, we'll be opening up 3 groups again in January 2025 for new participants. 2 of the groups, Sell More Coffee and Grow Your Coffee Business, will be offered again for people who already have businesses and want to expand their business in a supportive environment during these volatile times in the coffee industry. A new group called Start a Cafe or Roastery will be offered for the first time. This is for people who want to start a cafe or roastery in 2025 or are considering opening a coffee business one day in the future. Groups start the week commencing January 13th and prices start at $175 per month for 3 months. These mastermind groups have been a game changer for participants in 2024. So whether you're a coffee roaster, producer, cafe owner, or any other kind of business owner in the coffee industry, or you're hoping to be one in the future, head to mapitforward.coffee/group coaching to secure your spot by paying for the first month in advance or pay the full 3 months up front and get an 11% discount. Spots are limited, so head to our website or click the link in the description and sign up today. Welcome to the Daily Coffee Pro by Map It Forward, friends. I'm your host, Lee Safar, and this is episode 4 of a fantastic 5-part series with Anne, the CEO of Metropolis Coffee in Chicago. The reason that this series was important is because last week's series was with Ana Donays from a coffee producer in Colombia, in Quindío, from Café Primitivo. And this moment, folks, in the industry is marked by a year that has been confusing as fuck for everybody. Because when you won, you were confused because your win didn't really materialize into anything that you thought it would materialize into. And when you lost in a way that can't even be conceived of how drastic the loss was, and you're left numb. And so when we presented how this moment is being experienced from the perspective of a coffee producer, and Anna so eloquently put how confusing this moment was for her, the post that led to this series perfectly articulated how confusing this moment is from the consuming end of the supply chain. So it's a really great balance, and I'm really grateful for the conversations that we've had so far in this series. And that confusion that I'm talking about is often fed by myths that exist in our industry. And when a company is a small company that morphs into what gets built over the span of a couple of decades, like what's happened to Metropolis, the myths get fed constantly. And so I would love in this conversation to talk about what are the myths that need to be busted around running a company the size of Metropolis.
Mhm. Yeah. So, I mean, we discussed before that, we're not a huge roaster, but
Hmm.
we're not a small company either. We have over 50 employees, we've kind of right on that threshold. So I think the first idea is that we have some type of leg up on buying power,
Mm.
um, that maybe micro roasters don't have. And I think that's the case for a lot of roasters of our size. There's this idea that everybody's getting cheaper coffee, and it's not true. Like, we're all pretty much pulling, especially here in the States, like we're pulling from the same,
Stock.
importers,
Yeah.
a lot of the same relationships. So, so this idea that for some reason maybe my neighbor is getting a better deal. I mean, maybe they are, but it's not going to be that much better, right?
Mm.
So if you really look at how they're operating and how you're operating, we're operating very similarly. And on top of that, it often is that when you see somebody's wholesale pricing, it's close to yours, and you always go, huh, how? Like, how did they know that this, it's like within a few pennies, right? So
Mm.
we're all kind of looking at that with each other, and not really admitting that, the myth that the next person's doing so great because, as I mentioned before, like they've got really cool hoodies and they have beautiful things. It's really not true. Like we're all working very hard, in the same ways and with very similar margins, to produce a good product. And I think, unfortunately, there's a few other things specific to specialty coffee, that there's an idealism
Mm.
around specialty coffee that is difficult to overcome. And that idealism is our fault. And it started years ago when we told people that coffee's only good for the next 5 days after you get it. It started that coffee only can be brewed and produced in one way for it to be legitimate, right? It started around this idea that coffee has to be made to order, and it should be
Mm.
made to order for you. And those myths that we've established in order to sell coffee are actually putting us out of business. Um, because what
Wow.
what what they're doing is we've created our own handcuffs. And we've all done it. And Metropolis is for sure equally to blame. And we've spent many years undoing those things because, what is the greatest value that we can provide is buying coffee, for a fair price from producers, and buying more coffee, because the more coffee that we buy, the better they do too, right?
Mm.
So why haven't we looked at innovation? Why haven't we looked at inventorying more? Like learning from the commercial roasters that are inventorying. Obviously, we don't want coffee sitting on a shelf for 2 years, but coming to reality about, what it is that our industry is, what it was, and what it in order for it to stay alive, what it has to become. Um, and one of the things that we've discovered, and Metropolis now produces, the United States' only compostable Nespresso capsule.
Mhm.
We produce it in our facility in Chicago. Has been kind of the blowback of people not really getting it or not understanding. But a big reason why we've gotten into stuff like that and frac packs is because we're trying to dispel the myth that specialty coffee has to be one way. And it's been a painful exercise. I think it's actually resonated with a lot of other roasters as well. But what we knew is we had to innovate, we had to bring on new products, and specifically look at products that had less coffee in them.
What do you mean
That
by
use
less coffee in them? Tell me more. Like an
Yeah,
iced latte in a can or
you
something
know,
like that?
Yeah, so extraction methods that maybe use less coffee. But, for example, we put a lot of our dollars, our hard-earned dollars behind this Nespresso capsule because we believed in the product
Mm.
and because it uses 5.5 grams of coffee. So you can make a whole pallet for, a few 100 pounds of coffee, and it's a really good product, and, we like it, and so is it perfect? No, but, like, we kinda saw the writing on the wall with where things were going to go. Um, and it's but again, even getting to that point has been us dispelling the idea that coffee has to be a certain way in order to be intrinsically good. Because it's only intrinsically good if it benefits the people around it and all those people on the supply chain.
So did the pandemic help with your, I guess, your journey
Yeah.
towards having to discover this part of your business?
Yeah. So I think of it like phases. I come from, as I mentioned, commercial coffee, and I
Mhm.
worked predominantly in distribution for food
Okay.
service and office coffee. So I never had products that I like to sell because I was a coffee fan. And it
Mhm.
was like I had like really crappy, frat packs that were
Mm.
disgusting and, watery K cups and all this stuff that I didn't like to drink that I was selling,
Yeah.
because it was convenient, and that's what America drinks. And, so when I came into Metropolis, I said, we gotta come up with some new stuff. I want, to take something that is notoriously not very good and make it as good as it can be, right? We're not
Mm.
reinventing the wheel here. The pandemic really pushed us into that because with when we brought on the capsules, we said, this is gonna be our next thing. Let's take something that's really monopolized by one company and make it as good as we can.
Mhm.
And it'll become our niche, right? And that type of innovation has been really important to us. And I think it's maybe inspired others, but it's also led to so many different things like, our SQF certification and being able to sell into Costco. And actually, the most exciting part has been getting to produce this product as a co manufacturer for our specialty coffee competitors who are now close friends of ours. Um, which has built a bridge that I can't tell you, Lee. I mean, it's been really exciting. A lot of these people I had like, I had fandom for them and,
Yeah.
we get to work with them now.
So to go back to something you were just talking about, which is Costco.
Yeah.
So I know you cop a lot of shit because you work with Costco from the industry.
Mhm.
Why do you think that we as an industry tend to look at a company as a sellout whenever they step into that space?
I think there's a few different things at play. Well, first of all, we've all been members of the hateration. There's a lot of jealousy.
Right.
It's really, really fucking hard to sell into Costco
Yeah.
because you have to have top level operations. You
Yeah.
have to have You have to have your pricing model perfect. You have to be your auditability has to be top tier. You have to get a certain and even to get to that point is a tremendous amount of infrastructure.
Mm.
And you have to be able to produce a product at the level that they dictate to you. But the good thing about Costco, I just will say, is that Costco, they're fair. They don't take huge margins. A lot of the other, retailers that we sell into do.
Mm.
So I've been impressed by that. But I think the other part of that too is this idea that, grocery and specialty coffee are inherently at odds. And the reason being is that goes back to what I just said, which is that, we have told people that coffee has to be made to order and it's only good for about a week, maybe two. And grocery, they're buying stuff. You take off your roasted on date, you put on a best by date. And you do it because you have to do it because you're trying to get your coffee out there.
Mm.
And so it is sitting there for longer than what you would have ever recommended. And so I mean, it's inherently at odds with the business model that we've all developed. Metropolis is going through this thing that I think a lot of people can relate to, which is that specialty coffee is not efficient. And it's not efficient because we are literally cutting a batch the day before or the morning of and producing that day. So if
Mhm.
it's a short day, guess who everybody's coming in?
Mm.
We're still turning on the roasters, we might have 50 different SKUs because we make a bunch of different sizes. We do a bunch of different private label. And so you're sitting there, you're trying to organize this mess and you're putting it on your different roasters if you have more than one. And you're saying, well, how am I gonna, get this to be done by 5 o'clock, right? The truth is, if we could inventory it and our customers would accept that, maybe within a week or two, right? Keep the product that you need, it would be a lot easier. And so I think that there's this idea that you're selling out because you're making it too easy. But unfortunately, the reality is that the future will rely on us being able to be more efficient, and grocery and club deals force you into efficiency.
And do you think that we have created that kind of myth in our industry as kind of this masturbatory way to separate ourselves out from commercial?
Yeah, it's a big part of it. Also, it is a specialty product. We know what has happened at the farm level for us to get this product. We know it's not a shucked product. We know
Mm,
that it's handpicked. We so admire the beauty of it that we have become the prescribers. As Tony would say, we've become prescriptive to the consumer
mm,
because we want it to be a certain way. And, we don't sell a finished product. Coffee's not finished. It has to be taken home. It has to be brewed. We
mm.
lose our controls over it, right? Or it has to be brewed at a restaurant or wherever. So I think that it's really important for us to feel like we are the artists of this wonderful thing. And in many ways we are. And we're trying so hard to preserve the beauty and integrity of the product that this is our way to try to control a lot of that. And, it's a double-edged sword. It can be a really wonderful thing, but it's not a sustainable thing.
People often talk about the fact that, um, just on that point, people often think that the bigger a company gets, that the less their connection with their suppliers.
Mm.
Now, I know of two of your suppliers. Shout out to Felipe and shout out to Angel.
Hi,
So Felipe
guys.
from FAF and Angel from Belco, who seem somehow to have, even from a distance, a hand in every guest has fucking come on the podcast this year. I love it. I love it that even when they don't say, hey, you should have this person on the podcast,
Mhm.
it turns
Mhm.
out that the person speaks very highly of both of them. So it's
Oh,
fantastic.
yeah. Yeah.
But I know for a fact that you, uh, and I didn't know this before I invited you onto the podcast,
Mhm.
but tell me about this myth that often people have is that as you grow as a company, when you're selling into Costco and you're selling into this, all of groceries and distribution and stuff, that somehow your suppliers are no longer treated the same way and they're just a number.
No, I mean, I think growing pains are hard, and Felipe can definitely attest to that. When you're late on an invoice because you're waiting for this huge deal to pay you or something like
Mm,
that. There's been, I mean, definitely he's worked with us in a million different ways. But on the other end of that, our former director of coffee, Chris Petrovich, who's now at Triboca, shout out to Chris, really worked hard to forge that relationship with Felipe, even though, Felipe had already worked with our owners years ago, to consolidate our coffee buying to
mm,
him because the relationship was so strong. And, we had a lot of commonalities between some of our largest SKUs that came out of COVID. That it just so happened that a lot of the different wonderful coffees that, FAF uh, uh, sells us it fit really well with what we were making. So in my view, it can benefit as long as the relationships are there. It can actually really benefit your suppliers. I think it also makes them better because now we require, a very strong set of paperwork. It used to be old Metropolis. You could bring anything in; it would go in the warehouse, glass, allergens, whatever. Now we really vet our partners, because also if they're fucking up on the back end and then they're doing
mm.
shady shit, that makes us shady.
Yeah.
Because it's in some ways, I mean, it's trimmed a lot of fat, but in other ways it's made, I feel like, the whole our at least our supply chain a lot better. And it makes the relationship closer. It makes the odds higher too. Like if something goes terribly wrong and tomorrow one of my big clients, pulls out and I have a bunch of coffee that I have to pull by X date, but in that time I feel like, we're able to work together too because we're both in this together, right? So I learned from you know, one of my former bosses, Ben Harrison, that there's a difference between, and he was the president of Tradecraft when I worked at Tradecraft, and he
Mhm.
said there's a difference between vendors and partners. We seek partners. We don't seek vendors. And I
Wow.
live and die by that. My vendors, my suppliers are our partners in business. And anybody that seeks to change that language in a contract with me, I've learned this the hard way. I won't work with them. We're dealing with something like that right now. They're like, we're not, we have no partnership with Metropolis. And I thought, I have no partnership with you either. Goodbye. I don't want to work with you.
So that's 2 series in a row where Anna said the same thing,
Yeah.
that she turned around and said to somebody in Chicago, which is hilarious because you're in
Yeah.
Chicago. She actually said to somebody in Chicago,
Yeah.
"You're not the right partner for me,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
we're not going to do business together." What I'm so excited about is that this moment is showing people what character they've built as a human and as a leader, but also it's showing everybody else what kind of character this person
Mhm.
has, whether no matter who you are and where you are on the supply chain, your character. And actually, I'd like to frame this as a question. What role do you think your character as a person is playing in in business in a year like 2024?
Me personally?
Well, for you personally and the way that you view the world, right? Like what role is your character playing? And do
Mhm.
you think, because, this is a year where people are saying, it's just business, it just comes down to numbers, blah,
Mm.
blah, blah. Is that the case?
No, I think resiliency is really gonna be the thing, right? So it's not about you fall off the horse, you get back on. And I know we're gonna talk more about like what's gonna happen.
Mm-hmm.
The culture of a company is really the company's personality, and that personality comes from leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the humility that
Ooh.
we have. So
Ooh.
Tony's big thing is that he always says egoless. We're
And
egoless,
humble.
or we try to be, and humble all the time. And because we approach things that way, it's really easy for us to make friends in the industry, or
Mm.
with for our our partnerships. Um, when they aren't though, and you have to play by those terms, mm, it can be really difficult because like I don't I've realized that I, like you, Lee, like I get really angry, and I at a certain point, like I'm gonna be 40 next year, I like stopped giving a fuck about what somebody that I
Word.
don't like thinks of me.
Yeah,
And I
word.
used to really care about it.
Yeah.
And I think that you have to get to a place where you're doing so well with your business, and you're kind of what the mission, even if the business isn't doing great, the mission that you're on, that you're comfortable maintaining bridges that you want to maintain, but walking away from situations that aren't aligned with your core values as an organization.
Yeah,
And I think you
wow.
get better and better than that, and better at that.
Yeah, amazing. I can't believe you and I haven't been in a room having conversations before this series. Like,
I know, I know.
anyway,
So fun.
so fun. Well, join us for the last episode of this series, folks, where we're going to talk about what the next 10 years looks like. Peace, love, and peanut butter. Have an amazing rest of your day. I really hope you enjoyed this episode, friends. Please don't forget to show us some love by subscribing, liking, commenting, and most of all, sharing this podcast with your friends. Check the show notes for links, including our sponsors and our Patreon. And stay tuned for more great conversations on the Daily Coffee Pro by Map It Forward.